everyone, I am Mannat and today I'm here to explain to you all about functions in the Python coding language. So before we begin, I'm going to give you a very small example. So functions are there all around us, right? And functions also happen in our body, like respiration, digestion, excretion, etc. Now, if we talk about respiration, it's a process, it's a function that happens automatically. It doesn't have to be triggered or it doesn't have to start or stop. It keeps happening. But when we talk about digestion, it has to be started only when we eat food. It doesn't start, it doesn't start like that. We need to eat food and then only it starts. Otherwise, digestion cannot happen anyways. It cannot happen without us eating food. So we triggered that process through eating food. And so we basically called for that function. Similarly, in Python, functions are also triggered. They are supposed to be called. They need to be called so that they can work. Like our body, if we want to have digestion in our body, then we need to eat food. Then only our process or our mind can be triggered, and then only that process will be started. And that function will be there. Similarly, in Python also, the functions that we create, they need to be triggered, they need to be called so that they can be run. Now, functions have specific names, like this process has a name, that is digestion. Similarly, functions also in Python need to have a name so that we can identify them. Suppose if anyone wants to call out your name, they need to know your name, right? You need to have a name so that they can call out, or they know who you are. Otherwise, it would be a very big mix-up. Similarly, we need to have specific names for all the functions that we create. It's just like saving a new number in your phone. You need to dial in the number, and then you save it with a name that and then when you click on that contact, then only the number gets dialed, then only you can call that person. Similarly, when you create a name and when you when you create the name of the function and when you will call it using your code, then only that function will be called and then only that function will be ran. So I hope it is clear till now what functions are and how they can be called, right? So after giving functions name, we need to properly create a function, and that is using def. Now, what is def? Def is a term that we use to create functions. Like in your phone, you have the phone, you have the dialing app, so that you can create contacts. Similarly, here also we have a tool in Python that is def. So this small term is very useful to create functions, to give them names, and then to to bring them into existence. So def is a short form of the word definition or defining. Now, when you have the term definition means giving meaning to something, giving value to something, and that is what def here also does. Def term gives value or meaning to the term that you're typing. Suppose you type a term, say, add a number. Now, to create this a function, to make this a function, you need to add the term def before it, so that the computer knows that, okay, this is supposed to be a function. If you don't add def before it, the computer won't know that it is a function, so it won't work. Like, if you want to know the gender of a person, you need to write it specifically, like if it is a male or a female. Similarly, here also you need to specify whether it's a function or not by using def. So to understand this, let's do a small project sort of thing.
So here is a little demo question that will help us to understand. So we know about what is def and how we can create function and all, but how to implement it, we'll quickly do a demo question. So the demo question says to accept two numbers as the input from the user, and then we have to create a function which will add the two numbers, and then we have to print the final output, the final sum of the two numbers that the user entered and they were the inputs. After that, we'll give it the output, that is the sum. Coming back to our code, so here first, to ask for the numbers, we have printed a statement, enter the number. So the user will enter the number, and for that we have to create a variable, as you all know. we'll create the variable with the name n1 or number 1, and we'll also put the label int, which specifies that the input should only be an integer, it should only be a number and not anything else. We'll repeat the same thing for the second number also. For the second number also, we'll write enter the second number and we'll create a new variable n2, but we'll enter the same things for it, int, and in the brackets we'll put input. So I hope this is clear till now, how to create the variables. Now let's move to the main part, that is creating the function of adding the two numbers. So first we'll write def, which means that we are creating a new function now. So the two things that we do when we are defining or the two things that we do in that line where we are writing def is first creating the name. So the two main things in this question was adding numbers. So we took the two key terms, that was add and number, and we shortened them here to create the function name, add underscore num. Now definition means defining or giving the value to something. So obviously we cannot define the function in a whole sentence, so we have to create a name which is self-explanatory, which tells us what the function does. So the first task is done. Check that we have created the function name. Now in the bracket after it, we have to specify, it is compulsory for us to specify that on what variables will this function work. So the first thing was naming, just like we name a baby, we named this function. Then second, we specified कि वो किस किस variable पर काम करेगा. Now we want the two numbers to be added, so we named the two variables here in the bracket that were n1 and n2. So I hope this much is clear. After that, adding a colon in the next line. Now this is when the main part comes of the function. ये वो main part है जिसमें हम specify कर रहे हैं that वो function का अब actually में उसका action होगा क्या. Now we have added here a new variable which is sum. Some variable will hold the value for the sum of the two numbers that we put in. So some variable की value equals to n1 plus n2. I hope this is clear till now. Let me just explain really quickly. So the two things that we did in line 6 when we were defining the function was first naming it. That is done. That's the most easiest part. Second, उसके आगे का जो ब्रैकेट्स होते हैं उसमें भी स्पेसिफाइड दैट वो किस वेरिएबल पर काम करेगा, वो किस वेरिएबल पर काम करना चाहिए, so that the computer knows that it has to perform the function on these two variables only. So we put the two variables n1 and n2. After that, adding a colon in the next line, we specified that इस function का नाम तो adding है, but अब now the computer does not know that what adding means. So we will specify it by adding the action here, by adding the symbol of addition here. So we created a new value or a variable, and we gave it the value of adding n1 and n2. So now the computer knows that add num function means to add the two variable values. And after that, we do the return sum, and then in the last line print, we say here is the sum of the two numbers you entered, and after that we close the statement with the quote marks, and then we add a comma so that we add the element in the line. This comma means that after the statement there will be one more element which will be printed, and that will be the function, and we copy pasted the function here with the bracket. So now we'll enter the numbers 3 and we'll enter the number 8. So we know the sum is 11. Let's see if the computer also does that. And yes, it showed the correct answer. So that means our function worked. Now if you want to experiment with it, you can even change the operations. You can even change the operation to subtracting. So just to check how functions work in different things. We just did of adding here. You can even do for subtracting numbers, multiplying, dividing. You can even check if the numbers are even or odd by having the remainder or the quotient operations. So basically my point of showing you the functions is to introduce you to something new in Python and to help you know that how things can be easier by using functions in Python. You can experiment with it as you would like. Here I gave you a very simple example that was of adding two numbers. I hope you got it, and I hope this lesson was fruitful and useful for all of you. And I hope you got at least the basic idea of how functions work, how we can create them, and how they are useful. And yes, I hope this was useful to you. And thank you so much.